Well, it all begins, man's deterioration on the human side of government begins with a marriage license. You hear the preacher say at the end of the message, at the end of the ceremony, by the power vested in me, by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I now pronounce you. Somebody ring the bells. Shing! Magic takes place. Many define marriage or the spousal relationship to some measure in relationship to a ceremony pursuant to a state marriage license. Think about that just for a moment. Where does the state get authority to make people husbands and wives, or the authority to have sexual relationships? And how does a man, a clergyman, how does he get this authority from the state to do this? Weird setup, I would say. We must not, however, allow our cultural upbringing to cloud the scriptural doctrine of marriage or the husband-wife relationship. What is a marriage license? A tool of the state to establish authority over marriage and the husband-wife relationship. States have established the definition of marriage as a three-party covenant or contract, between the man, the woman, and the state. By the way, did you even know that? I'll tell you what. 35 years ago, on Monday, I used a marriage license. And I had no idea that I just entered a three-way contract between me and Cindy and the state of Virginia. I had no idea. They didn't tell me that when I got it. The United States Air Force Academy Legal Office on the internet says that a marriage is a contract between a man, a woman, and the state. A marriage license is a modern governmental invention. You won't read of anybody in the scriptures that got a marriage license. You won't read of anybody in American history that got a marriage license to become husband and wife until the early part of the 19th century when it became popular, 20th century, when it became popular. All of the early presidents, none of them got married with a marriage license. It's a modern invention. It's devoid of scriptural merit. It gives the state jurisdiction over husband-wife relationships. It establishes three parties in the covenant. Here's what the state of Illinois said in 1928. These are all judicial decrees from courts. It says marriage is a civil contract to which there are three parties: the husband, the wife, the state. Wow. I wish somebody had told me that. New York court said in 1936, every marriage is a contract between a man, a woman, and the state. The word license is defined by Black's Law Dictionary as a revocable permission. First of all, it's a permission, but it's revocable. To commit some act that would otherwise be unlawful. Do you realize to have a marriage license, marriage first has to be against the law? It has to be illegal. Marriage. By the way, it's interesting. They didn't call it a license to become husband and wife. They called it a marriage license. And that's exactly what they intended to say. Because almost every state in the Union made sexual relations, sexual intercourse illegal without a license. So, it's unlawful unless you get permission, and that permission can be revoked. We will take this permission away from you. What? Listen, I'm not making this stuff up. Now we're reading from law and law books. To this, the courts agree. Texas in 1946 said, their court said, a license is merely a permit or privilege to do what otherwise would be unlawful. Wow. The state of Georgia, the Supreme Court of Georgia, in 1931 says, the object of a license is to confer a right or power which does not exist without it, and exercise of which without license would be illegal. A license to sin. It's a license to do something which otherwise would be illegal. Interesting, our English word license comes from the Latin, from which we get the word licentiousness, meaning lacking legal or moral restraints, especially disregarding sexual restraints, marked by disregard for strict rules of correctness. This is the word that we get our word license from. The lacking legal or moral restraints. Disregarding sexual restraints. Disregarding the strict rules of correctness. Sexual activity is not having sexual restraints or the strict rules of correctness. License and liberty are opposites. In Christian circles, we'll hear these words sometimes used. Liberty is not a license to sin. Liberty and license are the opposite of each other. You realize in the United States, you do not have the liberty to take a husband or a wife or to engage in sexual activity. They say that you need a license from them to do that. Now, of course, that's changing in some states. For instance, the state of Pennsylvania withdrew the sexual sins, many of the sexual sins, such as cohabitation and so forth. These questions need to be asked. Do we have the liberty to marry? Or do we need a license to marry? Is marriage a government-regulated evil for which we need a license to commit the sin? Why would it be illegal to marry without the governmental permission? Why would anyone need the state's permission to participate in something that God instituted? Can you imagine this for me? Listen, we've had a state marriage license for a little over 100 years now. So we were born into it. We don't even think anything about it. You want to get married, you want a wife or a husband, you go down to the court, you go down to the courthouse and you get one. You don't even think, why am I at the courthouse? Why does it say license here just like it does on my driver's license? I don't know. It's just what we do. Well, why don't we take it the next step further? And it will be the next step further if the logical conclusions of governments continue their way. So you want children? Come right on back down to the courthouse and get you a license. We're issuing license for children. Why not issue license for children? We got license to create the marriage. Let's have some for children. How many would you like? Okay, we'll give you a license for one. You want another one? Come back and get another license. Would you realize how bizarre that is? How stupid that is? How insulting that is? God said multiply and replenish the earth, and you're going to give me a license to do it? And yet you step back one more and we think nothing of it to go get a license to have the husband-wife relationship. Nobody told me that when I got mine. Nobody explained any of this to me. State marriage license and 1 Corinthians chapter 6. Here's what we want to ask. Dare any of you, having business with another, be judged before the unjust and not before the saints? 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 1. King James says, dare any of you, having a matter with someone else, go before the unjust to have it matter. Paul prohibits believers from going to court to have their matters settled with each other. Do you realize that a state marriage license puts if two believers enter into and accept a state marriage license, puts them in a contract with the state, and they have to go to the state to have the state settle their disputes? Do you realize that a state marriage license puts you in conflict with 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 1? Those who obtain a state marriage license are forced. I don't know what I meant to write there. I think this is I don't know what that says. But for their husband-wife relationship into a covenantal one with the state as an equal party. Issues arising between husband and wife fall under the jurisdiction of the state, contrary to 1 Corinthians chapter 6.